Hello.
Eleanor here.
Trevor here.
And we are from...
We're from what?
Topocata, which is a small creative studio specialising in animation, our own animation style, based in Hertford, UK.
Okay, that's
it. I just
the
quickly
bit out of the way.
Trying to get that off pat. I'm not sure.
We will get a theme tune that involves that somehow.
Trevor's going to sing. He's got quite a good voice, actually, better than mine, so
Yeah.
that's a better option. Anyway, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to our next podcast, because I don't know what number it is now.
We did used to say what number it is, but we've done that many. We've lost track.
Oh my goodness.
Amazing, isn't it?
I think it's on to the second hand. That's how many.
Second hand.
Number 6. This is called Why We Don't Use Adobe Software.
Why don't we use Adobe? I hate Adobe. I'm sorry I said it.
That got out quick.
I know. It's an involuntary reaction. I can't help myself when I talk about Adobe.
We use Affinity Suite.
I feel more relaxed when you said that.
Which, rather happily for us, just as we started our animation studio, it wasn't far behind Serif starting Affinity.
Yeah, they thought,
now's
now's the time to start.
Yeah, so we were right on it right at the beginning, and it is fantastic, I have to say.
Yes, it is. Well, that's just rounded up. Well done.
Okay.
We've got to fill it out a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. Go on then, you go.
Can I just carry on with I hate Adobe?
Yeah.
Or why we don't use Adobe? And we've been slightly more polite in the title of the podcast. Adobe, well, I mean, I suppose a lot of people know about the whole subscription model. So Adobe, for those who don't know what we're talking about at all, Adobe is a company that creates graphic software. So that's software that enables you to do painting, adjust photography, design, logos. It's the software that allows you to create these sort of artistic, wonderful creations that can be applied to so many different things in life. So,
and it's
creative things in life.
It's been around for a long time, basically. So
Yes.
Therefore, it is like an industry norm. If you're looking for a job, you may well be asked, are you competent in Adobe
software?
So it was there first, basically.
Yeah, and I have to say we probably haven't extensively used it. So for me saying, that I don't like Adobe, we've used Photoshop, and I have used Illustrator, and we've used Lightroom, which was an Adobe product.
Yeah.
So Lightroom was for photography, and that's for
quite good.
adjusting your photograph. Yeah, it was. I mean, the thing is, obviously, Adobe does have a reputation for the quality of its software and the quality of the results, and how in-depth you can go. It's complex software if you use it in the full.
Yes, yeah, but I always found it quite, it's not intuitive particularly.
Not necessarily. I think because I've worked in visual effects, I've worked on software that has very simple tools to get things done quickly, whereas Adobe seems to bloat out the user interface with lots of buttons and shows you everything at once. And so it's a visually complex piece of software as well. You're actually looking at the interface. Where it doesn't need to be, you really only need the tools that for that particular job you're doing at the time. So I've used software in the visual effects industry where you're really just seeing the image that you're painting, for instance. If you're painting on an image, it's just the image, the paint tool, and that's it. And you obviously then you can have the menu, and that menu is basically just applies to what you're doing at that particular time. And it actually takes quite a long time to load up because of that as well. It's got all the bells and whistles.
The other thing that really did change for us is having to subscribe on a monthly basis. Yes. So we don't always use it every month, or I don't use it every month. So for both of us to have monthly subscription,
that didn't really make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And then kind of assumption and annoying that if you don't pay up every single month, you can't use it at all, and you've lost everything that you've done.
Yes.
I think that's wrong.
Well, you haven't obviously lost the original files. Those stay on your computer.
But
you can't access the software, or you can't access, this is the thing, it went cloud based, didn't it? So there are certain things that you would store on the cloud. It always sounds silly, that, doesn't it?
I think most of those clouds, aren't they in Sweden?
They might be.
I think they are. I think they've got all the servers that are churning all this stuff. So
yeah, because even though the overarching company is Adobe,
but I don't know that.
You don't know that. Can't really qualify that.
No, sorry about that.
Okay, right. Well, that's our expertise.
I was just trying to say the cloud's not in the cloud. It's actually somewhere on Earth.
So it helps if you can visualise it. It's a big fluffy cloud hovering over Sweden or somewhere. Anyway, yes, subscriptions are, I think, if you can avoid them, the best avoided, because over the lifetime of use of the software, you will probably end up paying thousands and thousands of pounds for a piece of software.
Once you stop using
it, you don't own it. So you're paying a lot of money for something that you don't ultimately end up owning. Mm-hmm. And that, to me and to you, feels like a very bad model. Mm-hmm. They do it under the premise of being able to consistently update and to be able to provide you with cloud services. But we didn't actually... I mean, I would just like to use a software. I don't need it connected to the cloud. We can store the files on our own computer. So none of that is necessary for us.
So that's basically why we turned somewhere else, and we found company Serif, who created the Affinity Suite, which is basically alternatives. So they have Affinity Photo, alternative to Photoshop, Affinity Designer, alternative to Adobe Illustrator, and Affinity Publisher?
Affinity Publisher, which is InDesign.
So basically, you can just buy them, and they do have updates. And then when they have a major update, I'm sure there may be another cost.
Well, I think that's fine. If they're having a major update, then of course you're gaining something extra, and they've spent the time actually doing it. So that does make sense. If it's not suddenly a huge amount of money, they're very reasonably priced. At the time of going to press, it's actually half price. They got 50% off. And once again, I have to say, we're not getting paid to do this. We're not getting sponsored by Affinity. But yeah, they have got 50% off at the moment, which makes it £34.99, or a usual price I think is around £69.99.
Wait, is that each one?
Each one, yeah. Right. So for the whole suite of 3, you are paying.
What's quite good also is that because it's a suite that you can interchange from one program to the next very, very easily, which I find quite good. If you just think you need to do something that's actually in you're working in a publisher document, but you need to do something in photo, you can very easily do that and switch back again. And don't seem to notice. And they've actually got, I mean, I'm not sure quite how they got away with it, but a lot of the tools are very similar to Photoshop, and InDesign are very similar to Illustrator. So actually switching will take some working out, because you do have to get to work out how it deals with things like mattes and stuff like that, and without getting too technical. But basically, there is some learning that you will have to do going from Adobe to Affinity. But they've made it more of a smooth transition by having very familiar icons, very familiar interface, and shortcut keys that are very, very similar. So it's not the huge leap of learning that it could be. So they've done very well on that respect. So it was a small company based, I think they were in Nottingham. But then earlier this year, I think. They were bought out.
By Canva,
which is a way bigger Australian company. And it was quite interesting. Because Affinity is used by about 3 million users, and they're designer users, basically. And Canva is used by about 175 million non-designer people. So it shows you the kind of what their planning may be, that one can enable the other. And I think the hopes are that Affinity will keep with their specific designer base. And not make it for non-designer users.
I think there's a worry, isn't there? But that worry might go both ways. But there was a worry from the Affinity community of people who were sort of more trained designers that somehow there'd be some dumbing down or whatever, because it goes to Canva, which Canva is very easy sort of plug and play type, drag and drop, create a design in a few seconds. So mixing that with Adobe, where they suit, it's more for I've said Adobe. See how much they've just worked their way into the psyche. Much more affinity.
Start with the same word, the same letter.
More affinity, where it's more designers who see themselves as more professional and that they're a bit more in depth than things that are just quickly put together.
Yeah.
There was concern that there's maybe somehow that the Affinity software is going to get simplified, oversimplified, or whatever.
But I have read a piece, not by Affinity, about the fact that they're excited that they'll keep as a standalone product, but be able to use some of the kind of cloud-based and sort of distribution of Canva.
Right.
So,
well, that would be a good direction. Cloud-based makes me a little bit nervous, as in what they don't want, hopefully, to do is change to a subscription model.
No, they also said they weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
But mine's changed,
Because as soon as that happens, then I think people will start looking again elsewhere, which will be a big shame for us, because we started with Affinity right from the beginning, didn't we?
And we're going to continue, so for the moment, yes.
Totally do that. Is there anything else to
What else can we...
I didn't rant enough about Adobe, actually. I wanted to rant a bit more about
I thought you ranted quite a lot.
I think probably everyone listening thought I'd ranted quite enough about it. It was just Adobe, even at... Look, I'm going to finish with a small rant. Even at when I was doing visual effects, any time Adobe crept into the mix, and we mostly didn't use Adobe, I think. Well, any time it did, we received something from a client that was from Adobe. We railed against it because it just wouldn't mix with any of the in-house tools that we were using. So it was even a pain in the butt then.
Well, I think that's because they want to rule. That's why they've got this whole kind of cloud thing that you can add in all these different aspects.
Well, one massive thing we didn't mention, actually, is that a lot of Adobe designers or Adobe users at the moment pretty cheesed off that there has recently been a privacy notice added that they were going to use people's work in AI modelling. So there's something we discussed in our first podcast about how images that people use every day to day are then used in development of AI imagery. So AI imagery obviously is made up of images collected from various sources, and essentially Adobe looked as if they were saying that any work produced through their software would be up for grabs.
Subject to this.
Yeah. They used the word machine learning, which got people nervous. And Adobe since then have said, no, absolutely, we don't use people's work when they're using our software in the production of or the creation of generative AI. But I think it's still got people twitchy about it. Adobe said that it's just the stock imagery that's used and anything that's on the cloud. So it's still, not fantastic. But that's something that has got people thinking, right, I'm off. I'm not...
Right.
Like, how can you work in software, particularly if you've got NDAs with clients and stuff, that in some way could filter into production of AI modelling, makes people very nervous. So that's a lot more people have been looking at Affinity.
Well, especially if you're paying so much money in the end.
Yeah.
To be able to use it.
Yeah. And I think when people...
Safeguarded.
If people do eventually leave Adobe, they will be annoyed at how much they've spent.
Well, I think quite a lot of the reason why people don't.
Yeah.
Because they're so invested.
Yeah. I can see it.
There's a tipping point.
Yeah,
surely.
Absolutely. So, I recently found a tool, because this is a difficult thing. We have clients that send us Photoshop files. So that can be an issue. You can, how... I can't even open these unless I sign up to Adobe's subscription to get Photoshop. I can't actually open these files. But I have found a bit of online software that's really good. It only relies on donations as well. And I'll put a link in the description because I can't remember their name off the top of my head. But that has allowed me to open Photoshop files in the layers. And at least that allows me then to get it into different software, because I know that Affinity software can import Photoshop files, but they don't end up very often looking like the original file.
Right.
Because of the different way it layers things and other things.
Right. So this is a sort of step between.
So this is, yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Oh,
but
you should have looked.
I should have looked. Pixelpedia, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I'll put a link in the description for anyone who needs to open Photoshop files. Yeah, like we do. This has proved very useful.
Okay, fantastic.
So, I think that rounds it up.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, we said goodbye before, I think, didn't we?
Did we? And then we sort of carried on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my Adobe rant.
Okay.
Don't get me started again. We'll have to leave before I start again.
Okay, all right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.